I was having a conversation with my older brother a while back, and I was telling him about how I've started to spend less time with people who I don't really find that I have particularly meaningful relationships with. Also, stopped doing things like going out and drinking and whatnot. And he said something along the lines of, dude, Dennis, you're 23. Stop taking life so seriously. And that had me thinking, why do I have to act a certain way, be a certain way, do certain things just because I fall into this arbitrary age bracket of, my 20s, which at the end of the day, it's like not like I chose when I was born and chose to be 23, but I can choose and I do choose what sort of values I live with and how I live in alignment with them on a day to day basis. And regardless of my age, I'm going to take my values seriously because I think people who are quote unquote serious or intense don't always get the best rep, especially in your 20s. Because after all, everyone else is doing the same thing, right? That any 20-some-year-old would. Going on dates, going out, fancy vacations, working their careers and without a care in the world, right? So if you are serious, you stand out, you're different. But I'd argue that people don't take life seriously enough, especially at a young age. Because when they're so focused on pursuing short term pleasures and gratification, they're not focused on the long term because they think that that long term, that distant future is guaranteed, right? That, oh, I'll mess around in my 20s and then get my shit together later on, but like let me just like get it out of my system first. And it's almost excusable to do so because again, most people are doing that in their 20s. But that's not guaranteed. 5, 10 years, shoot, even 1 year next month, tomorrow is not guaranteed. Life is not guaranteed. You only get one shot at this thing. And there's no reset, there's no pause, there's no respawn or, save. Like, you take it as it goes, as it comes. And that's ultimately influenced by how you live on a day to day basis. In that sense, we could all be a bit more serious, right? Because life is so precious. It's not something to be taken lightly. And I don't know about you, but I aspire to live a meaningful life. I aspire to live a fulfilling life. I aspire to live a life I'm proud of. And I don't want to blink and be in my late 20s, almost at that magical number 30, and now it's time to get my shit together to start taking things seriously. To be at that point and feel just as lost as ever. Because ultimately, the earlier you start, or the earlier you don't start, the more it compounds over time. So when I think about my life and the way that I live in accordance with my values, I'm banking for the future. I'm preparing for the future, and I'm starting now. And I'm not trying to say that you're not supposed to have fun in life, because if it's not fun, then what's the point? At least that's what I believe. But at the same time, there's a degree of intentionality that needs to be exercised. And ultimately, I believe it really boils down to, I guess, this philosophy that I live by, which is take the serious things in life seriously and everything else playfully. And that's it, right? Decide what matters to you, what you take seriously. And when it comes to those areas of life, be intentional, be deliberate. Don't slack off or be lackadaisical. Everything else, just have fun. Take it lighthearted. And for me, at least in my day to day, I value my relationships. I take those seriously. I take my self expression and my creative work seriously, but in certain instances, playfully as well. I take my purpose incredibly seriously. But that doesn't mean I don't have fun either. It's just that my definition of fun and play look different from other people in their 20s. And the same goes for you, right? Just because other people value certain things at this stage of their life, whether it's their 20s, 30s, if you're in college, school, whatever it may be, doesn't mean you have to. Because you decide for yourself what matters to you, what you take seriously, because no one else can do that but you. No one else has your unique set of experiences and innate qualities that shape who you are. And likewise, you don't need to subscribe to what everyone else says is fun, right? The stuff that you see on social media, just because everyone else is doing it, doesn't mean you have to. If you want to sit inside and just lay on the floor, if you want to watch paint dry, if you want to knit, if you just want to gorge yourself with ice cream like I do on a Friday night instead of going out, then do it. That's your definition of play and fun. And if you're not living up to your own definition of fun, then you're in for a shitty time, right? And I say all this as someone who did all of the things, lived the sort of life that someone in their 20s is quote unquote supposed to live. But it didn't feel right to me because it wasn't me. And at the end of the day, I'd be remiss if I had stayed the same, if I didn't change a thing, if I didn't become a quote unquote serious person. Because nothing in life that was worth it or great or something to be proud of was half-assed, right? Apple didn't become Apple just by having aesthetic packaging, although I'm sure it helps. Disneyland didn't get created just because Walt Disney said, let's make it. There was a degree of intensity and seriousness that had to be applied, an intention and a focus, a knowing of what matters and what doesn't. And if there's anything that shouldn't be half-assed, it's your life. So, with all that being said, I don't know what else to say, right? You get to decide for yourself what matters and take it seriously. And beyond that, everything else is just icing on top, right? And you're able to have both. You don't have to have just the cake, you can have the icing too. There's absolutely no need to settle, and you won't settle if you're able to define for yourself what falls into those two areas. So, with that, appreciate your time. I hope this gets you thinking, perhaps gives you that kick to take yourself a bit more seriously, irrespective of your age, chapter of life you're in, or whatever else people around you are doing. Because ultimately, that's how you live a life true to yourself, a life you're proud of. So, with that, thank you for your time. I'll see you tomorrow.